Okay, first on the agenda from Krunal to discuss a tracker. What's up?
Hey guys, hi. Hello everybody. Uh, Actually, maybe I could share that what the tracker is about. So let me. Um, hope you guys can see my screen, right?
Yep.
Okay. The tracker is about the objector requests. This is something Casey I was also talking to some time ago. I posted on Ceph actually. Not sure if many people using it or know about this. Um, uh, just like how OSD has, where you can dump ops that are currently being run on OSDs, you have a similar concept on gateways as well. You can query the daemon and basically read all what all requests that particular gateway has sent to the Libreros, to which OSDs and how long it has been waiting on. So it basically holds on to an op and just prints a list actually. And the funny part is that if I'll click on, I don't think it might open. Yes, it opens, right? So if you see, it tells you this is what the ID it looks like. This is what it looks like, what ops are pending. This is super useful. Basically, you're just saying Ceph daemon on the object request. This is basically the socket, the gateway socket that you can query. The 8000.a sock that we currently run on vstart, that's the socket that gets triggered or gets open. This is super useful in the production people or people who are running clusters, Ceph clusters, whenever there is a hang, Rados or there's an Rados is hanging and there are multiple gateways that are choked up. You just run this command and it'll tell you all the ops, and then you can do all the magic of consolidating and figuring out which OSDs or which PGs this is kind of blocking on. And surprisingly, this feature has been there from a very long time. Very long time. I don't know if people have been using this or not using this, but this is what something we stumbled upon, and then we figured out. We tried running this on Gateway, and we saw that this doesn't work on the Gateway out of the box, and it does work on the other clients like RBD and CephFS, but it doesn't work on Gateway. And then digging a deep little into the code, I figured out uh, the way this works is it registers a command whenever you create a Libreros instance. And sadly, I don't know the reason yet. RGW today initializes multiple Libreros client. We initialize one for config store. We initialize one for Rados store. This is the actual which queries the S3 request, or this is the this is the one which we are more interested in. Then we have one for Neo Rados, and then this was the Realm Watch. This was recently added, but I saw there was a commit or there was a PR that got merged yesterday. This was basically causing a memory leak. It was reinitializing. All in all, before yesterday's PR, there were four objector requests that the four Rados clients that we were initializing in gateways. And sadly, the objector code today, uh, the objector hook that happens here. Oops, well, I could actually open that so that it shows up here. That objector hook silently, it this is where it goes, and if there are any errors, it just does not register. It just prints saying that blah blah blah. If you go into this particular code register command, it does not do anything. It does not register that particular socket. So what exactly is happening in our case is, first time when we go create Libredos, it creates that register hook, the objector request hook for config store. Next time when we create the new Libredos instance for this guy, since the first one already exists, it just silently ignores and does not create anything. So what now happens is every time you go and try to query the ASOC command here, this guy, you try to query this command, nothing shows up because none of the objectors or none of the ops go through that particular Libredos instance. Only the config store ops go through that instance, and I'm sure those are not interested to us. The more interested ones are the ones which are the S3 requests that flow through. So TLDR, because we are initializing multiple Libredos, this is currently broken for gateway. Uh, there are two ways of fixing this. Either the objector needs to go and support multiple Libredos for a single process, or we consolidate all of our gateway code and then create one Libredos and then have all of them use that same instance instead of each of them creating their own. So this is the first part of the discussion. First, I wanted to get them, then I had the follow-up part of it. But this is basically, should we use because RBD and all of them use single Rados clients, Libredos. So I was not sure what should be the actual use case, or we should support multiple Libredos, or at least objectors should support multiple of them, and then the the bulk the the it shifts to the objector people or the OSD people to figure out, or at least open up a request there, and then we can create a new enhancement there to support this. But without this, this is currently broken on gateway.
Thanks, Grunal. I remember you being confused about why that wasn't working.
Yeah, and so I basically added temporarily. I just added some local code of basically adding the name at the end of object request. So if I do that, each of them creates a new hook, and then I can actually see all the requests flowing through.
Yeah, I think it's a little awkward for Objector to assume that it's going to be the only one running in a process.
But what could be the reason we have having multiple Rados client as well? I mean, it's more. Again, I don't know the reasoning, but probably everybody created its own instance and not worry about using existing one, maybe. Especially because the other clients are using just one.
Well, currently, I'm responsible for the new config store one, but that's more about separation of interfaces. Like the config store can be a different backend than the
Yeah, the actual storing
backend
backend or the
driver.
storing, yeah, driver. And then,
So I think it makes sense for them to have separate Rados clients if they are both configured to use Rados.
mhm.
In the past, this is why I think this has been maybe broken for a long time. RGW used to have a config option num Rados handles where it would just have an array of these Rados clients.
Yeah,
At the time, that was because librados and Objector had some scaling issues.
I see. Okay,
Those had been addressed. So we did deprecate that in RGW.
interesting. Okay.
But one place, like we have the Rados client, and we also have the Neo Rados one, which is just a completely separate interface, better suited to async stuff, I think. I think it would be tricky to
I have a
make
single of,
those
yeah.
share the same objector. Maybe that's possible, Adam, if you have ideas there, but I don't know.
There are ways to do it. I mean, if you wanted to, you could implement a similar trick that the RVD team used to make Neo Rados and Paleo Rados, pardon me, Legacy Rados share the same objector. So it's possible. I don't know if librados has the ability baked in, though. You might have to code it.
Yeah, I think it's a little awkward because Objector is kind of just an implementation detail under librados, and so having the application be having that visible to the application breaks layering a little bit. I mean, I would err towards still having multiple clients, but teaching this admin socket objector requests thing how to deal with multiple, whether it returns like a JSON array of the different ones or if it can combine all of them together. I don't know. But the fact that it can only register the first one is not ideal.
Yeah, but this seems like I don't think I was audible before, but and this seems like a smaller thing. I mean, like the last proposal, I think is correct for this purpose. I would like to see, in the fullness of time, as we continue working on RGW into the future, one Rados interface that is Neo Rados, respectively, that we use. Now, I don't know about the config store. I think that's a separate topic, but for the data paths that currently librados and Neo Rados both do. I mean, that would seem plausible, and it was really I think that's been expressed as the intent, has it not?
Indeed, yes. There are reasons to like Neo Rados better, and there's just a lot of existing code using the current
Yeah,
web
and
Rails that has yet to be converted over.
so that's technical debt of a sort that we would we want to do, and but if this is a smaller project that needs to improve reporting, that doing that in a way that doesn't require us to do a complicated and very complicated to verify transformation of a lot of code would be good.
Yeah, this introspection for Objector looks really useful, so I want to support that. I think it's a little awkward that it's registering itself with the admin socket rather than the application RGW explicitly doing that. I think it would be easier if RGW could do that, because then it could give them different names if it wanted to preserve multiple clients.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I did it right now just to see whether it worked or not. I just passed in, I plumbed in a code which says objector, this is my socket name, and basically appending the config keywords at the end, and then it was able to create multiple of them. Yes.
Okay. Well, I guess that the fact that Objector is hidden behind the Rados APIs makes it
Correct.
difficult for RGW to register things after initialization.
Yes. So we have to do it before the initialization. So yeah, you do an init and then you do a connect. So between those two calls, you need to go in. So you need to first init, set the name, and then do a connect. So there are two calls that we do today to register live Rados, Rados.init and Rados.connect.
Okay.
So, that is still a way. It's just that then switching on to the objector to allow you to decide on the names of the socket and or the register, the hook command that the socket is still doing the same, but register different commands to that socket basically. And that command would be basically decided by the application.
Yeah, I like that approach. Having Objector like track an array and changing the format of the Objector requests command would be tricky with other components that are relying on its current behavior. So if we can just give each a different name, that's probably the least invasive way to do this.
Yes. The only downside to that is, as you said, right, like we are trying in a world of migration where we want to move our calls from the regular Rados to Neo Rados, right? So if user has to track, this is again real world problem, right? People who are running production clusters. If I have to look, I need to look at both of them individually, right? Because right now, if you look, the command tells you it can go and query one socket at a time, like one. So this command would now be object request dot neo Rados or dot legacy Rados. So you'll have to query both as an admin to look at what's going on.
Yeah.
So that's the flip side of having multiple things basically. Yeah.
And would we just have to document what these names are, or can the admin socket show what commands are available so that
Yes. So
users could discover
yes.
them?
Yeah, you can discover them. So basically, if you do a help, if you do a help here, you see this help here, it'll show multiple object requests here basically.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, it shows up.
Yeah, so with multiple clients, it would be awkward to know what to expect on each of them.
Correct.
But at least currently, NeoRados is only used for kind of a small subset of things like data log and not sure what else.
Yeah, I only
We'll
saw
need
data
to
logging.
move
Yeah,
things over.
yeah, I could only see data logging actually. At least I was on Squid. I didn't see anything going through the new Rados one, but yeah. So is the consensus we move this ticket to the more, but it's still technically a bug on the RGW, right? Like where it is not reporting, and then we still fix it from the RGW point of view, or it's more like an enhancement on the objector side to support multiple clients.
I think it's fine to keep in RGW, but so what does the fix involve? It involves passing a string into objector init, but that has to be passed into Librados also.
Correct. So basically, plumbing in, having an API in the Librados area to basically say set, just like probably having a set client. Like I have a PR. I could open that PR. Give me a second. This is just a proposal. Give me 1 minute. So if you see, if you see custom socket name, this is what I was talking about. Basically, set object or admin socket you pass in. You plumb in all the way up to the objector to allow you to set a socket name.
Right. Okay.
And then in the following commits, you basically just pass in this name here, NeoRados config, basically. And then whenever the next time it starts up, it will use that name. Actually, this is where it sees if there is an object or name is empty, not empty, the socket name, it appends that name here.
Got it.
It is pretty trivial, I'd say, but yes, but that's
Yeah.
that's another form of solution if you don't want, or if you want to converging all of them to use a single Rados would be nicer, cleaner. Again, I don't know the reason. Again, you said config might still need to have it, but that would require a lot of changes, like involve a lot of changes. But this is what I did a temporary thing and tested, and it was working as expected. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that just adding something simple like that to the Librados API without changing existing behavior would be pretty unobjectionable to other components.
Yeah.
And
So
sounds like a reasonable solution for us.
In an event, you do not set anything here, object init here. So basically what we're doing here is, just before the Rados connect call, we are going and setting the connect, we get the init, and then before the connect, we go and set it. So if nobody sets any name here, it would still default to the admin object request, basically, and not have anything. So other clients should not have any issues in this. Basically, it's a no op for them in a way.
Sure.
Yeah. All right. So then I'll put this PR out, or instead of making it draft, I'll just create it if no objections here. And the follow-up question I had was again on the same part is on this guy here. So this again, coming back, right? If you look at this guy here, it prints out this information for us. This is meaningful, so useful, but at times it requires to decode this. It takes a lot of efforts, because right now what this tells you is it just tells you the Rados object. It does not translate anything into the S3 bucket or S3 object or S3 user here. So you still have to go into your RGW logs, look up how or what this object is basically at this M time or this M time when this ops was sent. What this op or what was the operation that was sent through. And another sad part is today RGW does not log any request. We only log the request after it is completed, like the 200, the beast log format that we log today. It's only logged after it is completed. Same with the ops log. Ops log gets logged only when the operation is completed. So basically, we do not have any visibility today. So think about a scenario where the backend is stressed here, and RGW is sending requests, and we do not time out. They're all requests sitting out there, and you might see operations like this, or you might see ops like this, right? A single S3 can have multiple ops. It could be bucket related, it could be user related, it could be actual object write or object read. You don't know. All it would say is object ID at that point of time. So it is useful, but not super useful. So you still have to do a work of rewinding this and trying to connect it with the actual front end request. What exactly is the request, right? So uh, I was proposing is somehow we could add another field here, like the transaction ID. Like this is TID. It's for this TID is it's basically just incremental counter here. It's an objector ID and nothing to do with what the object or what transaction ID the clients are sending. So I was proposing that we should add, or we could add here a client ID or a caller ID or some name which would tie up what this belongs to. And in our gateway, we do have a transaction ID that we generate for every request. It's called as trans ID, as far as I remember. Actually, uh, I forgot the actual. It's I could. What was that name? I forgot the name. It is TRANS_ID. They
Yeah.
right. Yeah, that's the ID. So if we could somehow print that ID or add that ID here, this then becomes super meaningful and useful for, like, this is super useful for people who are running production clusters. They can tie up, or we are trying to figure out what's gone wrong. You can technically tie up everything from the front end to all the way to the back end which gateway, which RGW is stuck, and then based on PG and OSD you can then map to which backend or which OSD actually, or which PG is stuck at this point in time. So it kind of gives you a clear picture, complete from start to end. So if we could add this, also would be super useful. And I'm guessing for other clients it might be useful as well. But again, I wanted to have an opinion here, and then I plan to create a tracker basically to support this. Um, Again, I have an idea on these as well. I did create a temporary PR where, again, same thing, plumbing an API to set it, and then any caller, any user, any application can go and set that an objector, basically same way where the way we are setting the socket name, we create an API set caller ID, whatever that function column name is, or whatever we want to name that field, and set it from the client. And in our case, we'll set it from the RGW where we set it to transaction ID.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think the only way that we'd be able to pass that into requests is through by extending the Rados APIs.
So it would be a similar way that, remember the socket thing that I showed you right now, like have an API which allows you to set the socket name, same way you allow set an op ID or actual,
But
yeah. Go ahead.
the socket name is global to all requests.
Yes, this is not global. That's true. This is per op. Yes. So most of our requests flow through async io.cc or RGW tools. Those are the two gateways for us to call librados. So inside those two functions, we just go and set the op ID, the transaction ID. That is what I was thinking.
But there could be a lot of concurrent calls that would race to set the global ID, right?
No, but this op is for every request that we make to OSD, right? So it would not raise every op. There would be only one op that is going in, and every operation would be a different structure, different member. It's an array of ops, right? So multiple requests, all of them will have different ops here. So each request would go and set its own ID here, and you
Yeah, I'm
cannot
just
have
saying that we would
two.
have to extend the Rados API so that each OSD app that we send could pass in this extra integer.
Yes, correct. Yes, yeah, it's a string actually, not even an integer. Yeah, so it's a trans ID. I think it's a string. Yeah. So what would be the again? You said having a field there would be a concern, or what, or having an API setting.
My concern would be that we're adding an API that only makes sense for RGW or would only be used by RGW.
But that's an API that is exposed and not stopping RBD or Ceph to also set it if they want to. Like it's an API exposed by the librados, right, for setting. So it's RGW is leveraging that API to set on every op.
Yeah. I guess there's a little precedence for that in the tracing work that happened somewhat recently.
Yes.
We extended Librados to pass traces, but Sorry, I got to answer the door. I'll be right back. Is Yuval here? Maybe you could speak to that part.
The JSON trace, right? The Jaeger tracing actually.
Yeah, sorry, can you repeat the question?
So Yuval, what I don't know if you heard the precursor. What I was saying is, if this information is useful, but it would be more useful if we can add a transaction ID here. And I believe for me, adding a transaction ID currently, I was proposing to expose an API on the Liberados to add another field here. And Casey was saying Liberados is currently extended to support tracing, and it passes the trace structure. And does this trace structure has that ID somehow, the
Yes.
transaction ID?
Yes,
So
the trace
can we-
structure. The trace structure has the transaction ID.
Right. But the problem with the trace structure is it's only enabled when you're enabling the Jaeger tracing. Is that correct? It does
Yes.
not work without enabling that.
Yes.
So is there any downfall of enabling it but not running the distributed trace? Would it impact the performance, right? Or not?
Sorry, I mean, if you enable tracing, there's a performance cost. I don't really understand. So
What Casey was saying is probably adding another API on the Liberados might, I mean, again, nothing stopping, but it might raise eyebrows. If we already have some, if you're doing wire tracing, can we just leverage that?
yes, but then you have to turn on tracing. My question is like, what do you try to so do you try to dump something on the OSD side, or this is something that actually is only in Liberados?
So this dump is on the gateway, not on the OSD.
So yeah, it would be
Okay.
Liberados
So-
objector.
Yeah, so
Liberados.
you don't need to send it over. I mean, the whole effort in the Jaeger tracing was sending the information over to the OSD, but this is not in your case.
Correct. But what Casey is saying, instead of introducing another variable here, can we leverage tracing? Right, Casey? That's what you were trying to say?
Well, I'm mostly just pushing back against adding random things to the Rados API to pass into every request. But I mentioned tracing as a
Alternative.
prior example of doing that other components did accept.
Is there no way to
Right.
construct the API such that it has to be passed in every request? Like there's a Rados handle. We couldn't this be attached to that? Wouldn't that make it invisible to most calls?
Well, that would be the only way that would work is if it's global state or state that's global to the Rados handle, but we want to send lots of requests concurrently.
Well, of course we do. I mean, so there could be a call. So I mean, you can introduce a call context or whatever. I mean, I don't know. It would be that might be a good idea, but Rados has been around for 20 years, so I wouldn't stick with it.
So again, Casey, I still didn't trying to understand the concern. Like having a random API setting ID is a problem, is what you're saying? Well, I mean, it's again not a random ID. It's just transaction ID, but yes, it's a random API where it might not be useful to the other clients. Is what you're going towards, right?
Yeah, like Liberados should be a stable and generic API for all clients.
Uh-huh.
And while I agree that it would be useful if this admin socket could dump some extra context to correlate with RGW state.
Right. I mean, we could tie up the TID as well. Like, I mean, instead of introducing a new field, instead of what TID is just a counter here in incrementing over number of hops, we could make this TID actually to the transaction ID of the client, right? That is also another option if you don't want to introduce another field. But we still need to have an API to set this TID instead of picking up.
It doesn't sound to me like having a new field that's compact is absurd to add if it adds value. So is it the case that there's already a structure that has a member variable? We're just saying we don't want to put a new one in. I'm a little. I don't know the Rados well enough to know what I'm talking about here. I thought there was like a. I thought the only thing there was like a handle, but I thought that was not global with the one. But I guess it is to all of our different uses. So it's just calls at that point, and there's apps, but you don't want to add something to an app. Place to put this would be the place to put this would be on the op structure, is it not? I mean, at least I would let you measure all the things that are ops.
Yes, it's on the op structure. Yes.
I would vote for. I don't think that any other member variable is intrinsically bad, especially if it's compact. But I think you would have to motivate it with other people. But I don't think that I don't think escaping that is worth making a more complicated structure instead of workflows or structures. I mean, it's fairly readable to have a thing like this.
Yeah.
If I understand it correctly, that doesn't sound terrible to me. And I don't think having fields that change value depending on who called them is a great idea. Like a TID field that has 2 or 3 different semantics depending on phase of the moon.
Yeah, I think things expect that to be a counter that increments, so I wouldn't mess with the TID.
Yeah.
What is the current member variable? What is the current definition or decal for it? Is it like an N64 or is it like TID might be, or is it something else?
I'm just looking at it.
It's probably whatever you pick there. I mean, if it's like bytes, then it sort of is what it is.
It's an atomic unsigned integer 64.
Okay, well, that doesn't sound super painful to me. I mean, we can vote on that, but I find myself not hating that if the behavior, if the feature it enables is useful.
Yeah, I mean,
it sounds like vaguely that like we're kind of agreeing that it is. I mean, adding 4 bytes to the structure probably doesn't have a very measurable cost.
Yeah, and I can vouch definitely it is super useful. Actually, tying up a lot of times you just don't know what's going on.
Well, it's 8 bytes, but forgive me.
Yeah.
For me, the question is just how this is exposed to the Liberatos API. I would prefer not to just keep adding extra random arguments to the AIO operate functions that we call through.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Maybe we can just add a function to the object operation, allowing the application to set this variable.
Yes, that's what I'm going on. So what I'm doing is not changing the AIO interface or something. So the good part is all the way from starting to end, we have the DPP operator, right? The out prefix provider, basically, which is inherited by RGW ops. So that already has the transaction ID. So all you need to do is have that, set it on the op. You just use that DPP, get the transaction ID from the RGW op, and then set it on the operation, on the objector operation.
I mean, the out prefix provider is a pure virtual interface that only generates a prefix string.
For S3, yes.
And you can't assume that all Rados requests are being submitted within the context of a S3 request.
Right. So yes. So yes, you need an additional check there, basically saying that if it is an RGW op, then set it. If not, then you don't set it. Yes. You're absolutely correct. Not all of them have that. So you just cannot blindly copy. You just have to verify that it's an RGW op type, and if it is, then just go and set it. Yes, we can discuss about this in the PR, but yes, first of all, yes, if we are on the consensus, this field makes sense and useful, then definitely we can then open a PR and discuss more there. But
yeah, definitely would say separate PRs just to
yeah, of course, yes,
have different admin socket requests for each Rados client, and then enhance
Yes.
the objector dump.
Yes. Two-side a caller ID. Sounds good. So if I'll create another tracker for enhancement there, and then at least for now, leave that tracker in the RGW world, and then the PR that I was showing, I'll try to submit that PR to have a different socket name.
Sounds good. I will say that I don't think dout prefix provider is the right way to pass in this context, but I think it's going to be kind of messy, whatever we do there.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we can discuss. Yeah, there might be different ways we can discuss that, but at least
Just don't use thread local storage.
I tried the thread local storage, but then what happens is
No. I'm just
Yeah,
joking. I'm just joking.
yeah, it
Okay.
just picks up a different thread based on coroutine, and it just doesn't have the right value every time. Yeah, but yeah, sounds good. At least that's it from me for those two items on the objector thing. Thank you.
Thanks, Grunal. I look forward to having working objector introspection for RGW.
Mhm.
Okay, shall we move the agenda? Next up is David.
Oh, yeah. Hi, guys. So I'm essentially just put this on the agenda to kind of look at this PR and bug tracker. So the problem is essentially in Swift. There's like this X delete after header, which essentially you can set, okay, I want to delete this after, I don't know, 1,000 minutes or 2,000 minutes in object. And the problem is if you set that one twice, it will just use the first value you set. And yeah, and there's also a corresponding PR for that open since like I think a year or something. And I just wanted to ask if somebody would like to take a look at that PR and kind of look if the implementation is good or not, or good enough or not.
Okay. So not so familiar with the Swift side, but I believe that is this related to the object expirer code in RGW? Because I believe that we started using that for S3 restore object recently.
I think
But
it's
I do
implemented
care about
over
this.
a class function.
So this PR is in CLS time index, and it's changing the insert function, I guess. So is it just doing an extra search on every insert to remove the old key if it exists?
I think so, yes. I think that's the idea.
Okay. Hmm. Does anybody know if time index is used anywhere other than the object expiration stuff? If not, then we probably don't care about the performance hit.
Yeah, okay.
Did you say Swift?
Swift and I think restore object for temporary copies. Use this to delete the copy
That's right.
after.
Yeah, I think it's worth paying for. So that means like the Swift may go away, but the restore object would use it. But it's a rational use of it. But it's worth paying for correctness.
Yeah, because if you said it wrong the first time, then then you have a problem.
Okay. Just curious about test coverage. The tracker issue shares some results, but I think we have unit tests for most of these CLS modules. It would be nice to have some coverage there.
Oh, you mean that this PR adds another a couple of tests?
Yeah, under source test, there are a lot of test cases for the CLS client APIs, but I don't see one for CLS time index. So I think it would involve creating one, if only just to test this specific thing about overwrites.
Okay.
If I was to follow up with some guidance in the PR, would you guys be willing to do that?
Cool.
Okay, that's an action item on me then.
Yeah, this
Any
PR
other
has
thoughts on
been
this?
sitting around for some time. Like
Yeah.
Nicola, the one who also authored this, couldn't make it today, so I'm kind of replacing him. Kind of.
Yep. I always appreciate friendly reminders of things that fall through the cracks. Swift stuff in particular doesn't get much attention.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else on this topic or further topics for the call?
Not from me.
All right. Thanks, David.
Yeah, thank you.
Go ahead and call it here. Thanks, everybody. See you
Thank
next
you.
week.
Thanks,
Bye
everyone.
bye.
You did yesterday. You did when you put it in, but not since then.
I didn't let Google out.